P226. It is Shafe. So I'm driving home from a dentist appointment. I can't stand the dentist, but it's funny. Like, the more often you go to the dentist, like, the less afraid you get of it. It's like anything else. Like, the more you face your fear, the more you can deal with the thing that you're afraid of. I think the reason why, well, there's a couple reasons why that. Your body and your mind start to tolerate certain things that they didn't tolerate before. It's just like any other type of tolerance. Say tolerance to alcohol, tolerance to any other kind of drug. You get tolerance to pain, you get tolerance to discomfort, and also you realize that a lot of the stuff that you were afraid of or whatever isn't like, it's not really true. It's just shit that you made up in your mind. That's why, and that goes for anything. Could be, some people are afraid of the dentist. Some people are afraid of public speaking. Some people are afraid of talking to girls. Some people are afraid of, you name it. But the more and more you expose yourself to something, the less afraid you get of it, for those two reasons, in my opinion. You build up tolerance to the discomfort, and you also you realize that a lot of the stuff that you're afraid of was actually just in your imagination. I watched your video. First of all, I want to make clear. When I said I watched all 30 plus minutes of your video, I was not complaining about the length. So it probably sounded like I was, but I wasn't. So I make really long videos. So if anybody has a right to complain about it, it would be you guys about my videos, not me about your videos. But anyway, yeah, man. It's funny how different you and I are. Like, we're really, really different people, yet there seems to be this sort of common bond, like common understanding. Certain things that you've said in other videos that I haven't brought up before, that I'm like, okay, this guy has a pretty deep understanding of certain things. Like, you said, you called Yahweh I am that I am, the God who is outside of space and time and matter and all that stuff, and that, to me, demonstrated a very very deep understanding of the nature of God that most people don't have, because it answers the question that so many people have, like, well, if God created the universe, then who created God? What did God do before he created the universe? Blah, blah, blah. It's like all those sort of philosophical questions. I didn't mean to mock those people, because they are legitimate questions, and they're questions that I had when I was younger, and when I was sort of, my mind was less developed. But as time went on, I really, really began to understand, which you already have that understanding, is that there is no before God. There is no anything like God is, he's outside of nature. So, and it makes sense that you would, like, that if something was going to create nature, that it would have to be outside of nature, right? I liken it to, I like to make, analogies. Analogies really help me, and I hope they help other people too. But I have a fish tank. Well, we have a couple of fish tanks at home, and both my boys have a fish tank. And you look at the fish tank, right? And sometimes you're in the room with the fish tank, and sometimes you're not in the room with the fish tank. And the fish, he's aware of you. When you come in the room, maybe he doesn't notice you right away, but when you come in the room, eventually he looks over, he's like, oh shit, there's a human. And then he runs and he hides behind a rock, or hides behind a plant or something like that, because he doesn't know if you're going to do something to him or whatever. But every once in a while, you open up the top of the tank and you put food in there. So the fish is kind of excited that you're there, because he might get fed, but he's also afraid that you're there. But imagine this put yourself in the fish's shoes for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of the fish inside the tank. Not the fish wear shoes, but you know what I'm saying. The tank is pretty much all the fish knows. That's his environment. Or her environment, whatever. That's the fish's environment. Fish is swimming around the water. It doesn't even really realize that what it's in is water. But when you take it out of the water, if you grab the fish, right, if you catch him in your little net and you pull him out of the water, all of a sudden he knows, like, whoa, something's going on here. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not in my natural environment anymore. I can't breathe. It's cold out here. It feels different on my skin or my scales, whatever you want to call it. What the hell is going on? I don't know where I am right now, but get me back to where I was before. Because I can't survive out here. So this is very uncomfortable for me. I do not like this. So you put him back in the water. And then he's like, whew, I don't know what that was. That was weird, but I don't want to do that again. Imagine the fish going through that. Imagine how life-changing that would be for that fish when it gets pulled out of water. It's like it transcended into this atmosphere that it didn't understand. It was like way, way, way beyond its comprehension. All it knew is that it couldn't breathe that well. Couldn't breathe at all. It was trying to breathe, but it couldn't. Because your gills are designed to interact with water. They're not designed to interact with straight oxygen or nitrogen or anything else that's in our environment. Gills are designed to extract oxygen from water. You can say they were designed by God. You can say they were designed by evolution. It doesn't matter. It's still a design. But I think you're beyond that. I think you believe in God, so we don't have to talk about if there is no God. But how do you get that fish to understand your environment? How do you get them to do that? Because that fish is so far below you in its intellectual capacity. How do you do that? You say, well, I'm going to pull the fish out of the water, like fish, but the fish is still like, I don't understand what the hell's happening to me. All I know is I'm not in the water right now. Get me back in the water. The fish is swimming around. The fish doesn't really fully understand where it comes up against this glass, and all of a sudden it looks out and it sees you, but it doesn't understand what it's looking at. What am I looking at out there? Is that another fish? That's probably what it first thought when it saw you, right? Because that's what fish think. They think, oh, there's another sea creature and it's much, much bigger than me, and here it comes to eat me. I'm going to hide behind a rock. But maybe, just maybe, it begins to realize eventually that there's this invisible blockade between it and you, and you really can't, it really doesn't need to worry about you so much. And it kind of looks at you as a provider. Like every once in a while you open up the hood at the top and you give it food, and that's a good thing. As long as you're not doing crazy things like tapping on the glass or like, trying to mess with the fish and scare the hell out of the fish. As long as you're not, being emotionally abusive to the fish will grow very accustomed to you. But it still doesn't understand you. It still doesn't understand what's outside of its own environment, and try to explain to this fish, hey, there isn't water where I'm at. There's air where I am. And I'm walking on the ground. I'm not floating around in water. I'm like, there's this thing called gravity that pulls me down to the ground, and I breathe air, and I know you don't breathe air, but I do. Like, imagine that. But let's just say that you really wanted this fish to understand you. You really wanted the fish to understand you. So what would you do? What would you do to get that fish to understand you? To me, just follow my logic here. To me, it makes sense that you would actually, if you had the power to do this, you would become a fish. You would become a fish, and you would go into the tank and you would speak the fish's language, and the fish would listen to you. And because you'd be talking in his language, right? And you'd be trying to explain, this is what it's like outside of the tank. This is what it's like. And it'd be like, I don't understand. What the hell is oxygen? I don't understand what that is. Air? There's no water out there? What are you talking about? I don't know what that means. You're like, okay, you don't know what that means. So then I have to come up with a series of parables or stories. Okay, this is what it's like on the outside. What it's like on the outside is it's very different. And the only way that you're going to survive on the outside is if you learn how to breathe air and you don't breathe water anymore. And the fish is going to be like, well, how in the hell am I supposed to do that? Because the way I am, I breathe water. And then you, as the man turned fish, have to be like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a problem. What am I going to do? Maybe what I'll do is I will actually help you learn how to breathe air while you're underwater. If you really want to know what it's like on the outside, if you really want to be with me and you want to understand me, and you don't want to have fish problems anymore, which you're worried about. Like, your tank is very limited, right? You only have 10 gallons to swim in or 15 gallons to swim in. Whereas out here, you can walk around. There's like millions of miles that you can walk around and be much more free. Live a more gratifying life, have a deeper understanding of the universe and love and blah, blah, blah. But you first got to learn how to breathe air. And I'm going to help you. Well, that fish starts to try to do that, right? And it can't do it on its own. It needs your help. So what are you doing? You're like installing like air breathing lungs into the fish's lungs, and it's weird for him and he doesn't understand what's going on. And you're trying to, like, every once in a while, you're like, okay, why don't you swim up to the top of the tank every once in a while and let my father, who is, the guy who turned me into a fish, let him scoop you up into his net and pull you out of the water every once in a while, so you can see what it's like up there. And then that happens, and the fish is like, wow, this is weird. It's uncomfortable. But with my new lungs that I've just been given, I'm starting to learn how to deal with this. I'm starting to learn how to breathe the air. But it's still very uncomfortable. And you try to explain to the other fish in the tank, like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, I'm trying to learn how to breathe out of water. And they're like, dude, you're wasting your time. That's like stupid. That's stupid. Why would you do that? Yet, you still have this hope and desire that one day you can live outside the tank and breathe air. And everybody's calling you crazy, saying you're stupid, and you don't care. You kind of care, but you don't care enough to where you're not gonna do it anymore. I don't know. That's the way that I look at ascending, and going up to the next level. And I think there's a lot of parallels with the stuff that you believe in compared to what I believe in. I think there's a lot of parallels, and forgive me for not being able to respond to every single thing that you brought up. You were talking about Fibonacci levels, and you showed the seashell thing and all that stuff. But this is my take on the whole matter. This is my take on the whole matter. We don't understand. We are a fish in a bowl, and God is outside of the fish tank. And when you leave it up to our own imagination as to what's going on outside the fish tank, we come up with all kinds of interesting, weird things that make sense to us, but don't really make sense to a lot of other people. And it's really kind of based on our own highly, highly, highly limited understanding of what can be going on outside the fish tank. The only way to truly understand is if somebody from outside the fish tank comes in and explains it to us and helps us understand. That's why God needs to come to man. Man cannot necessarily jump out and go see God. God needs to visit man and lead him out of where he is. God needs to come to you and meet you where you are and lead you out. And the only way that you're going to get out is if you trust him. I mean, picture that fish, right? Screaming at you, like, how am I supposed to breathe air? And eventually, after trying to explain it to him 70,000 freaking times, you just go, you know what, dude? You just got to trust me. You just got to trust me that this is what's going on. I know I can't make you understand what's going on, but you got to trust me. Trust in the Lord thy God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul, and lean not on your own understanding. That's what you would have to tell that fish. Don't lean on your own understanding, because your own understanding is extremely flawed. It's okay to say that you don't know. It's okay to say that this is my crazy, weird theory on what, there's multiple universes, and this is where God is, and this 1 through 9 and all that stuff. And I'm not trying, please do not take this as I'm trying to disparage what you came up with. I'm not. And I'm not calling it crazy as in crazy like you're nuts and blah blah blah, whatever. I'm just trying to say that, we all do these things. A lot of us, and some of us more than others. Like we think about stuff a lot more than other people do. Some people don't go that deep, and we come up with these interesting theories that it's really difficult to make other people understand what it is. But you lean not on your own understanding, and it's hard to lean not on your own understanding and to trust other people, because it's like, why would you want to trust somebody? Why would you want to? How do I know the person I'm trusting isn't full of shit and is going to lead me astray? And that's a very, very good question. Because a lot of us have been put in a situation where somebody says, trust me. And you're like, okay, I'm going to trust you. And then, later on you realize, I shouldn't have trusted that guy. I shouldn't have trusted that lady. I should not have done what they told me to do. And what do you learn in that situation? You learn not to trust people. You learn not to trust religion. You learn not to trust pastors. You learn not to trust teachers. You learn not to trust your friends. You learn not to trust your parents, because they don't know what they're talking about, or they had ill intentions to begin with, and but the reason why I trust Jesus is because of the words that he said in the Bible. When I read the words that Jesus said, they just cut me right down to the core of, like, they just get to the heart of the matter. Like the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew. It's a good read, man. It takes a long time to put your trust into somebody or something, especially after you've trusted somebody that you shouldn't have trusted. It's a very difficult thing to do. Very difficult. Sometimes I wonder, like, God, can you even blame people for not wanting to trust you because of what I've gone through, what other people have gone through? I mean, you kids that have been abused or molested or whatever, and it's like they were molested by family members who were supposed to be taking care of them. They were abused by family members. They were neglected by family members, or people who were supposed to be taking care of them who didn't. So can you really blame people for not trusting? Yet, we still have this desperate need in our souls to trust people, or to at least trust in something. And if we don't trust anybody, then what do? We hole ourselves up in our apartment or our house or whatever, and we live a life of, I don't trust anybody, and I'm going to sit here behind my AR-15, and if anybody knocks on my door, I'm going to shoot through the door first and then ask questions later. And that's no way to live. So, you get in a situation where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You're screwed if you trust people, and you're screwed if you don't trust people. You're screwed if you trust this religion, and you're screwed if you don't. If you don't believe in anything. It's a difficult thing, but it's a difficult thing to work through. You're a deep guy, and you spend a lot of time thinking about these things, and it's obvious. It's obvious that you're searching. And to be honest with you, I think you're exactly where God wants you to be. I think you're right where God wants you to be, because He wants you to be searching for Him. If you stop searching for Him, that's when He would say, "Oh, He's not where I want Him to be anymore." I think that's the only way that you can really disappoint God, is when you stop searching for Him. You start saying, "Okay, I found exactly what I'm looking for in this thing, and I'm not gonna search anymore." But you're clearly not at that point. You're clearly still searching, which is good. Anyway, I don't pretend to have all the answers. I hope you realize that. I hope you know that from the videos that I make. I don't pretend to. Some of the stuff you bring up, I'm like, yeah, man, it's a really good point. And the stuff with the reincarnation, like I said, I've had the same thoughts. And there's people that swear to it. But to me, it's just like, all this stuff is like, we're fish in bowls trying to figure out what's outside of the fishbowl, and we just cannot do it. We just can't do it. We can't figure it out. That's why we keep changing our minds all the time. Maybe it's this. Nah, that doesn't make sense. Maybe it's this. Okay, yeah, that makes a little bit more sense, but that theory still has holes in it, so I'm going to refine the theory a little bit more. And then you finally find a theory that you're pretty comfortable with, and then one day something happens, or you have an epiphany, and you're like, okay, that just blew my whole theory out of the water. I think if you read the words of Jesus, He makes it pretty clear. He knows that we can't fully understand what's going on outside the fishbowl. That's why He talks in parables. That, He says stuff like, what is the kingdom of God like? The kingdom of God is like blah, 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 blah. Everything is a parable. Everything is a analogy. Why? Why doesn't He just tell you exactly what it is? Because He knows that you're not gonna get it. It's like talking to an infant about astrophysics. Infant doesn't even speak the language, let alone the infant doesn't speak the English language, let alone have the vocabulary to talk about astrophysics. So what do you do? I hate to put it this way, but God's dumbing it down for us. He's dumbing it down for us. He's giving us mental pictures to help us understand. And we're not going to fully understand until we die and we meet Him. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm not going to fully understand. And that it takes a certain amount of humility just to let it go and just be like, you know what, I'm not going to fully understand. I want to understand it for sure. And I feel like I gain a better understanding of it. But sometimes I get way ahead of myself. And I think I think a little bit too much of myself and my own theories. And I realize that I'm leaning on my own understanding and I'm not trusting God. That if God really is up there and he's so unfathomable that it makes sense that you got to put your trust in him in order to have him lead you out of where you are. And I'm not saying you, I'm saying us, I'm saying me, I'm saying everybody. He demands that we do that. He commands that we do that. That we lean not on our own understanding. He commands that we do that. For a good reason, because our own understanding is dog shit, basically. It's nothing. It's shit. Think of the theories that a fish might have about what the outside world is like. They probably incorporate water. You're like, well, it's a different kind of water that they swim in. It's not the kind of water that we swim in. I think it's this kind, it's like, and then you're sitting outside the fish tank thinking like, dude, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's not water at all. Totally different. You would almost be tempted to laugh at the fish, at the stupid theories that the fish is coming up with about what it's like outside the tank. We don't know. We don't know. And we're not going to know until we're there. Plain and simple. We're not going to know. But until then, it's like we got to humble ourselves and we got to trust. But again, you got to have a good reason to trust. And the reason I trust is because I read the words of Jesus and he just sticks out among anybody else who's ever spoken or written. And people who think that Jesus never existed, I think it's funny because he's a pretty historical figure, but if Jesus never existed, I like to meet the guy who made him up, because that dude's from another world. The guy that made him up. The guy that put those words in his mouth, supposedly, that made up all the stuff that Jesus supposedly said, that dude, the guy that made him up, has like a 300 IQ, 700 IQ, 1,000 IQ, whatever it is. Way, 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 way beyond me. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the matter. I hope you're doing well, buddy. I hope you had a good 4th. I didn't really have much of a 4th because my family's gone, but I just hung out. But I got to get back to work here. Be well. Talk to you later.